So, you're seriously considering buying a narrowboat. It could be a potentially life-changing decision. Well, we've created this guide to help you with buying, because owning one may seem to be the perfect way of living the good life. But there are some important issues that you need to consider before diving in the deep end. It mostly depends on what you want the narrowboat for. Usage can affect the purchase. Will it be for the occasional holiday once a year, every weekend, or every day? Do you intend to live on it?
It really does sound idyllic, the notion of living aboard a narrowboat. Close to nature, all that lovely fresh air, and the freedom to roam. It might be sensible to rent a narrowboat for a longer period than you would really expect to use on holiday. This way you will discover a lot more about life on board, and get more of a feel to ensure you really are making the right decision.
What type of narrowboat are you looking for? The main difference is the type of stern, and there are 3 types of stern to consider. The traditional, semi-traditional and the cruiser. This picture shows the traditional stern. It is the smallest of the 3, thus offering the least amount of external space. Just 2 or 3 feet to stand on. Good room for 1 person. A bit crowded for 2 people together. This type of stern comes from traditional working boats. It is often called the trad. Perfectly suited to life aboard, providing more living space inside.
The next is the semi-trad stern. A sort of compromise between the traditional and the cruiser. It looks very similar to the trad but has more space with seating.
The last, but not least, is the cruiser stern. Ideal for a holiday boat because of the large rear deck space. Usually between 4 and 8 feet long. It provides ample space for several people in comfort. It isn't unusual for people to live aboard this cruiser stern type and utilize it as a garden or pet space.
Now we need to talk money. What's your realistic budget? Like cars and houses, narrowboats really do vary in price. The cost depends on size and finish. Expect to spend between 15,000 to 150,000 quid depending on the narrowboat. Once you've forked out a huge wedge, there's a lot of ongoing costs. Do you really know how much it costs to run a narrowboat? Grab some paper and a pen. There's many factors to take on board. Most will influence your outgoings, such as the amount of cruising you do, your creature comforts such as domestic appliances that you use, the type of fire you have, either coal or diesel, even the use of hookups at a marina such as electricity. Let's go through all the main expenses. You may be surprised.
The cost of mooring usually depends on the length of the boat. Also the location and of course the facilities that they offer. Like residential properties, you could pay $2,000 a year to moor in a Midlands marina, or pay another 10 or 20 grand for a private residential mooring in central London. You will need a license and the fees depends on the length of your boat. For example, you will be required to pay about 1,500 quid for a 70-foot boat, but it all depends on your usage of canals and rivers. As you insure your car, you need to insure your boat. The cost will also vary too. Expect to pay from 100 quid per year depending on the value of your boat. Realistically, adding damage protection, breakdown cover, personal accident protection, and no claims protection, you should expect to pay around 250 to 350 quid per year. Budget for up to £500 if adding on specific cover such as laptop, bicycle and mobile cover. Now we come to utilities. The usual bills such as electricity. Obviously, it depends on how much you use. Shoreline utility costs vary. Solar panel or wind-powered generating system may reduce outgoings, but clearly there are the upfront costs that will need to be added to your budget. There is an optional overhead. This is breakdown cover. You can buy it for narrowboats from £50 to £200 per year depending on your narrowboat and the type of breakdown cover required. We all poo and there are costs to use narrowboat toilets. Some narrowboats have sewage waste tanks that need to be emptied via a pump-out facility. So if your boat has a tank, factor in about £20 per emptying. This depends on your tank size and of course, your toilet habits. If you have a cassette-type toilet, you will also need toilet fluids costing somewhere between £20 to £50 per year, again, depending on your requirements.
Needless to say, we need fuel for travel and even for heating. A narrowboat will consume about 1 to 1.5 liters per hour. Some appliances run on bottled gas, usually hobs and ovens. Propane gas bottles can cost around £47 per 13 kilograms bottle. Narrowboats have lots of consumables, from rope and fender sets, as well as batteries for lighting. Toilet treatments have been mentioned, there's also water purifying, diesel treatments, engine greases and oils. These depend on the boat, so make inquiries with the seller. Annual narrowboat service and ongoing maintenance is important, and costs between £150 to £350 depending on the engine type. Hulls needs blacking every 2 to 3 years and you need to replace anodes at the same time. Marinas vary in cost for taking your boat out of the water, and putting it back in again. Blacking materials and costs also vary depending on the size of your hull. There are 2 types of blacking, bitumen and 2-pack epoxy. The cheapest is bitumen coating.
Please do not buy a narrowboat without a survey. A full survey should be carried out by a qualified marine surveyor. Expect to pay around £500. A thorough survey can save you money in the long run and helps if your heart rules your mind. The surveyor will check the overall condition of the narrowboat and identify faults on the hull as well as internal systems. Important stuff that you really need to know about before purchasing, and cheaper than a sinking boat recovery. Insurance mentioned briefly earlier, but be mindful that our license is conditional on you having a boat insurance policy in place. Marinas insist on insurance too. Narrowboat insurance is unlike car and home insurance in that it can be tailored to your own personal requirements. Also, it isn't postcode specific.
You may not plan to continually cruise, so you'll need a residential mooring. Or if you want to use your narrowboat for short breaks, you will need a leisure mooring. Residential moorings fees vary and depend on the length of boat. As mentioned earlier, mooring fees also depend on the facilities and the location. Budget for around £2,000 to £3,000 for a mooring per year, in say, the Midlands, whereas 10 times that is not unusual for a private residential mooring in central London. It's very important to make mooring inquiries before purchasing your boat, as it can be the deal breaker. Finally, there is another important cost that can vary depending on your needs, and that is security. A gated marina with CCTV and security patrols will cost more. Reinforcing your doors and windows with additional locks or even bars isn't too expensive. Shed-type alarms are cheap. A locking fuel cap may be a must. Locking gas bottles is sensible. Keep your valuables out of sight is obvious.
Well, I hope this gave you food for thought. If you would like to be informed of narrowboats for sale or even important issues about narrowboat life, please subscribe to this channel.